A great many things can influence how fast a succulent cutting roots. For those of you looking for a quick answer, succulent cuttings, offsets and divisions can root in approximately 2 to 4 weeks during their growing season. But it is not as simple as that, and much will depend on the environment and the actual plant. One of the biggest influencing factors when it comes to rooting succulents is the time of the year. Most succulents grow and root fastest during spring, and this is when my plant nursery does most of its propagating as well. The weather is also quite mild and plants root fastest when it's not too hot and not too cold. Although many succulents will easily root during summer and autumn, the danger of heat waves may influence the success. When too hot, cuttings can literally get cooked. Most succulents will start going dormant for the winter towards the end of autumn, and some may not send roots at all if planted too late in autumn. Then there are succulents such as Aeonium that are summer dormant and grow throughout autumn, winter and spring. These succulents are unlikely to root during the height of summer as they are fast asleep but can send roots down in less than 2 weeks in spring. The second most important influencing factor is the type of plant. Some succulent species and cultivars root incredibly fast, while others take their time, even in the growing season. Weather can also make a difference in how fast cuttings produce roots. Although in the growing season it does not make that much of a difference, I've noticed our cuttings root at the speed of light when spring is warm and wet. If it's way too hot and dry for spring, they can take on average a week longer. Ditto in summer. If we don't have heat waves and get regular rain, roots appear quite fast. During heat waves, when temperatures go over 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit, many succulents that would otherwise root easily can take a backseat. Producing roots takes a lot of energy, and extreme heat may kind of shut some plants down. The spot and sun exposure succulent cuttings are in while their rooting matters too. Our ultimate rooting spot for sun-loving succulents such as Echeveria, Graptopetulum or Crassula is under 30% shade cloth in all-day sun exposure. The sun provides all plants with growing energy through photosynthesis. However, once the sun gets above a certain temperature, its UV rays may harm cuttings, hence the shade cloth. If cuttings are placed in too much shade, they are likely to take a bit longer to produce roots as they are not getting the sun's growing energy. They may also have to be reintroduced to the sun, as when a succulent is grown in shade for too long, it is at a higher risk of getting sunburn. Having said that, some succulents such as Haworthia, Gasteria ripsalis and other shade-tolerant succulents root better in a shaded spot. We use 50% shade cloth for these succulents. And lastly, potting medium can massively affect how fast cuttings roots. I use our succulent potting mix for all cuttings and it works a treat, though I've seen people swear by water, air and all sorts of other propagation media. But if you get the potting medium wrong, it can influence how the roots grow. I have experimented quite a bit with this when I started my nursery 10 years ago. In my experience, succulent potting mix or seed raising mix gave the best results. If you have a good quality succulent potting mix, most cuttings will root around the 2-week mark. So far we've established that if you propagate in the growing season, give your cuttings the right light and potting medium, the rooting process should be pretty fast. But it can be sped up by a smidge further. Rooting hormones can be used on succulents that take a bit longer to propagate. Most succulents should root just fine without rooting hormones, but if you've had problems with certain succulents before, rooting hormone can help things moving along. In my experience, cuttings will also root faster if they are watered regularly. Many species will root without water too, but some may dry out if the weather is too warm. Throw a bit of wind in and the smaller thin-leaved succulents can easily cark it. And finally, bigger cuttings tend to root better than tiny ones. Some cuttings of offsets growing under the mother plant, such as in Echeveria or Sempervivum species, may already have roots of their own when they are big enough. When succulents are propagated outside of their growing season, the cuttings, in my experience, either wait out their dormancy and root when the natural clock kicks in, or they die. During very dry and hot weather, cuttings that are not being watered can just dry out without having a chance to send roots. Similarly, if it's absolutely bucketing it down for days and it's humid, some cuttings may rot. Certain succulents are also more sensitive to the rain than the rest and may attract all sorts of fungal diseases, such as powdery mildew. When it comes to hen and chick style succulents, it is possible to make the cut wrong. The stalk needs to be big enough to separate the offset. If the cut is made too close to the rosette, it may damage its integrity and eventually the cutting will fall apart into leaves or rot from the middle. As you can see with this Echeveria hovei, the offsets are growing very close to the mother stalk. I'm only going to take this one cutting and leave the smaller ones to develop further and grow a big enough stalk that is easier to cut through. If you'd like to know more about how to take and plant cuttings, I have made a couple of videos which I'll tag at the end. Succulents and other plants usually go dormant when the conditions are not favorable to grow. Most take a long nap during the cold, dark months of winter, but some find the scorching heat of summer unbearable. As mentioned at the beginning, during dormancy, succulent cuttings are not likely to root. Some may, but I would not recommend trying. However, if you really want to propagate during winter for any reason, there is a way to trick succulent cuttings into rooting. To be able to do this, a bit of kit will need to be purchased. To trick cuttings into sending roots during their dormancy, the growing season conditions need to be replicated. So, for winter dormant succulents, extra light and heat will make them think it is spring. Plant growing lights will need to be on for about 12 hours a day to start off with. This will wake the plants up and force them to grow. In climates with low winter temperatures, the cuttings will need to be brought indoors or a heated greenhouse. Personally, I would just let the plants rest during their natural dormant time, but that is just me. If you want to experiment with cuttings over the dark cold days of winter, I completely understand. And that's it for today. I hope this video was useful, and if you'd like to learn more, you can subscribe to our channel or visit our website succulentgrowingtips.com. Thank you for watching.